start. So, hi everyone, thank you all so much for coming. So this is our second speaker. And just to remind people, YouthServe NYC is a service initiative founded and run by young people who would like to become more involved in the work of rebuilding New York City in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis. YouthServe NYC is a way to engage peers in service and in social justice this summer and beyond. So today we are so happy to welcome Adureh from the Vera Institute of Justice. The Vera Institute of Justice is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to build and improve justice systems that ensure fairness, promote safety, and strengthen communities. Thank you again for joining us. We are so excited to hear more about your own professional career, your work at Vera, and anything else you'd like to share. And just a reminder to everyone, later when we're doing questions, if you have any, you can just type them in the Q&A function, and then I'll read them. So yeah, thank you again.
Good morning, YouthServe. Thank you to you and Eleanor for inviting me to be here. Again, my name is Adureh Onyekwere. I am a program associate on the Reshaping Prosecution team at the Vera Institute of Justice. I am so excited to be a part of your journey to becoming an active part of the social justice movement. And I think it's really wonderful that you guys are taking such proactive steps to kind of arm yourselves with information during these tumultuous times. So the Reshaping Prosecution team at Vera, what we essentially do is help reform-minded prosecutors redefine their role in delivering justice and pursuing public safety. My team and I partner with prosecutors across the nation and help them implement their campaign promises as concrete, data-driven policies and practices. The goal of these partnerships is really to develop strategies for prosecutors to reduce incarceration and promote racial equity within their work. Prosecutors, as you guys will know or should know, they wield tremendous power in our criminal justice system, and they are pivotal in making decisions at critical points during a case, including charging, bail, plea bargaining, discovery, and sentencing. And all of those are points at which a person's life can be permanently affected. And over the history of prosecution in this country, the decisions made have contributed greatly to mass incarceration and racial disparities in the criminal justice system. And over the past half decade, communities across the country have really and truly begun to understand the power that prosecutors wield and have really demanded new approaches to the idea of justice. The traditional idea being retribution and revenge and like fire and brimstone. And the results of that demand are progressive prosecutors that have been elected to office, like Kim Foxx in Chicago, Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore, Diana Becton in Contra Costa, California, and Kim Gardner in St. Louis. And to kind of complement like this new wave of newly elected reform-minded prosecutors, Reshaping Prosecution, my team, has begun several site engagements with prosecutor offices across the country. And we have 3 goals with this site work. 1 is to clearly end mass incarceration. 2 is to address racial disparities within the jurisdictions of our site engagements, and to increase transparency and accountability to those most impacted by the system. And our site work typically has 5 phases: foundation, growth, strategizing, implementing reforms, and sustaining change. At the foundation step, that's where our research team, like our researchers, they gather quantitative and qualitative data from the prosecutor's office and the surrounding community. At the growth phase, that's where we're engaging in a process of learning and cultivating a culture of change with the prosecutor's office. For strategizing, that's where we are developing and workshopping potential reforms for the office. And in implementing those reforms, we're just rolling out the reforms in the office and really trying to make it take hold. And just sustaining the change, we're evaluating progress on an ongoing basis. To kind of execute the growth, strategizing, and implementation phases at each site, we create working groups made up of selected staff members from the prosecutor's office and community partners like the public defenders, community organization members, and other community leaders like religious leaders, like local NAACP, ACLU, and even the YMCA if they are considered leaders within the community. And the working group is part of our strategy to really ensure that these new policies or reforms are informed by an office's local expertise and are supported by a culture of change for sustainability. This process includes facilitating discussions with ADAs or assistant district attorneys and their leadership, formalizing a mentorship model within the office, uplifting the office's values, and facilitating relationships outside the office. That's the community partnerships that I was speaking about earlier. And within this working group, we really hope to create pathways for change by building deeper connections to the work and prompting substantive reflection on our country's severely carceral culture, and establishing the tools that are kind of needed to drive change within that prosecutor's office. And hopefully our site engagements will become a blueprint for the change that we need in all of our nation's prosecutor offices. And given the recent national focus on substantive change within law enforcement offices with initiatives like defund the police, hopefully that change will be much sooner than we think. And during this period of COVID-19, our nation and really the world have really borne witness to the fruits of our failed criminal justice system, from the tragic murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and really too many other Black men, Black women, and Black children, as well as, you know, the inactions and the not enough actions that have been taken on behalf of them. And the foundation of our failed system stems from a lack of racial equity in all of our systems, but specifically the criminal justice system. And to help bring racial equity as a focus within these prosecutor offices that hold so much power, our team has recently launched, like as of 2-3 weeks ago, a new campaign called Motion for Justice. And within this campaign, we highlight on the website, we highlight values that prosecutor offices, but really every system actor should have: racial equity, justice, truth, accountability, dignity, and community well-being. And along with these values, we also highlight the history of racial inequity in prosecution and have suggested action steps, strategies, and best practices for offices to adapt to their particular jurisdictions. And to kind of give you a brief look into the Motion for Justice campaign site, I just want to play like a very short video for you guys. So just give me a moment while I try and screen share. 1 minute. Can you guys see? You can see?
Yeah, I can see it.
Amazing. Make sure I get this audio. All right.
History tells us that the criminal legal system was founded for the control and subjugation of Black people.
prosecutors' offices have participated in this. They have not been critical enough of the disparity that's coming into their front doors to be prosecuted. They have simply rubber-stamped the criminalization of communities of color.
Understanding that history is important. We look at things like Jim Crow laws and black codes and think, oh, those were horrific, but that's kind of divorced from us. Who do you think enforced those laws? Police officers. Who do you think prosecuted crimes for those laws? Prosecutors.
We inherited this system. I mean, people that come to work every day as prosecutors throughout America, whether we're elected or we're line staff, we didn't necessarily choose this system, but we perpetuate it every day.
We basically help perpetuate the disinvestment, the deterioration of communities, because we lost a lot of human capital to the prison system. And I think that we have to undo and actually create thriving communities by addressing those root causes of failing systems.
We look at the racial disproportionality of who comes into our systems and recognize that there's been a disparate impact on communities of color. I think it's the prosecutor's responsibility to correct for that, to acknowledge the role that they play.
The prosecutor would see his or her role in a totally different way, not as this law enforcement officer whose job it is to lock up people who commit crimes, but instead as an individual who uses his or her power to make this system more just and fair.
If there is one area of the criminal justice system in which a difference must be made immediately, that is the one.
The point of this initiative is to equip prosecutors to tackle racial injustice specifically and unequivocally.
Right. So that was just a quick peek at the Motion for Justice site. So sorry about that. And if you guys want to check it out, the website is motionforjustice.org. It's really cool and has like a lot of short videos like that, like on all the values that I spoke about earlier. And it's really, I just kind of truly encourage you guys to explore the site, as it's not only for prosecutors, but it's also for community members. So they and you guys, since created this wonderful organization, so you guys can hold your officials accountable to making these necessary changes that we present on the Motion for Justice website. So I know like the purpose of your site, of your organization, is kind of see what you can do kind of in the wake of COVID and in the wake of the injustices happening in our country. And the first thing that I would suggest would be understanding that, social justice work, because it's a common misconception that it begins and ends with the criminal justice system or criminal justice system actors. And it's not that the criminal justice system doesn't play a big role. It's just that there are so many systems that are direct pathways to becoming involved in the criminal justice system, like the education system, healthcare, financial, housing, and others. And racial inequity is like intentionally at the root of all of these systems. And so we must all take the time to really understand the history of those systems, and when you can, shed light on them. And the second thing I would tell you guys that you could do, like in the wake of this, national craziness and this pandemic that we have, is just to read and read and read, discuss, and then read a little bit more. There are so many books and blogs and op-eds and thought pieces that you could use to learn more about the society that we live in and the outputs of that society. And after you read and learn, discourse is the next step. talking about these issues with those who know more, and even those who know less, is so much more impactful than you would believe. And, you know, don't tell your parents I said this, but I would advocate for watching, you know, more movies and TV, because there are just so many wonderful shows and movies that really depict the foundation of our society from the voice of people whose stories are not usually told and whose contributions aren't documented in history books or taught in history classes. Recently, I think it's a free movie now, but there's a movie that you guys should check out called Clemency, when you guys have the time, if you would want to. And I would also ask that, you know, you continue to learn about experiences other than your own and ask questions from a place of wanting to truly kind of understand other people's cultures, religions, cuisines, and just general life experiences. And also, I would just say keep doing this, like being inquisitive, wanting to know like what you can do to help, wanting to do your part, going to panels, being in groups talking, and just generally improving each other and your families and your circles and your bubbles and your communities. Thank you guys so much for opening up a space for me to speak with you today. That's all I have for you guys. I am opening up the floor to questions.
Thank you so much. That was great. So I think I have some questions to start, and then if people have any questions, they can use the Q&A function. I think they should be able to just type them in. So the first one is more about you. So when and how did you know you wanted to become involved in criminal justice reform?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, the interesting thing is I kind of fell into it about in 2016. I really wanted to know more about what you could do in the legal sphere because, you know, I didn't realize prior to that I was aspiring to go to med school. You know, I was a biochem molecular biology student, and I was aspiring to go to med school, but, you know, I was just like, this is probably not the path for me. And, you know, a political career or a legal career looked more so like what I wanted to do and kind of fit me. And I realized that I had no knowledge of what goes on in the legal community other than what I see on Law and Order, Criminal Minds, and all the other TV and books that I read. And I realized that, you know, there's probably more to that. I should probably learn more about the legal field. And I ended up as a research assistant to your wonderful aunt, Eleanor, when she was writing her book, Inside Private Prisons at the Brennan Center for Justice. And it was really there that I started kind of, I wouldn't say growing an interest, but starting to gain information that I hadn't been privy to prior to that. Because the idea of mass incarceration and that our criminal justice system being a failed system hadn't really reached mainstream at that time. Like it was still just bubbling up. So it was kind of the first time I even encountered that. And kind of through working with your wonderful aunt, again, I keep plugging LB, through working with her and working with the Brennan Center for Justice program, that's where I started developing an understanding of what was really going on in the underbelly of the justice system, and understanding that this is crazy. Why does no one know about this? And what can I do? What can I read? How can I learn more? And it was just kind of being thrown into it that I really kind of realized what I didn't know, that I realized that I needed to know more. And then that's just how it started, and it just kind of tumbled on from there.
Thank you. All right, another one is, you mentioned Baltimore, Chicago, and other places where there was a new generation of progressive prosecutors in place. How do you define a progressive prosecutor? And what does this mean in practice? What does this work look like?
So I would define a progressive prosecutor as someone who doesn't look at incarceration as the first answer. Quite as a society, we're kind of used to, like when we go to like a doctor's office and you have like some sort of ailment or illness, like there's treatment plans and different levels for those treatment plans, and we're used to people kind of, or to doctors saying, you know what, this isn't working, let me try something else. And it's not the same within the justice system. And a prosecutor is, a progressive prosecutor is someone who understands that. If you're trying to, they understand that you're trying to get to the root cause, because a lot, these, like, people commit offenses for reasons. And a lot of them are usually reasons of, you know, just like poverty, or generally being affected by the failed systems that exist in our nation. And what a progressive prosecutor, like what that looks like in action, would be someone who says, someone who commits an offense because of they have some addiction to some drug, right? They would understand that sending them to prison isn't going to be the answer. They're not looking for retribution or revenge. They're looking for rehabilitation, and they're also looking to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So the true interest of public safety, what they should do, and what I believe a progressive prosecutor would do, would be the best place for this person is in a drug rehab facility or drug treatment facility, so that we can cure the root cause. And so when this person is brought back into the arms of society, that they don't feel the need to commit a crime based off this drug addiction, because we have helped them overcome it. So it's looking for solutions, actual solutions to these problems, and not using incarceration as a fail-safe or a catch-all for every single offense. So yeah.
Thank you. Another one is, so it seems like Vera focuses a lot on policy research and analysis and advocacy work. I think you touched on this a little, but how do you think about those as tools for criminal justice reform compared to other types of law enforcement, so policing, being a lawyer, etc.?
I feel like they actually work hand in hand. We need people, of course, to be law enforcement. We need people to be police officers, and we need people to be attorneys, prosecutors, and public defenders. But where the role of policy reform comes in is people that are kind of like a third party, recognizing that, hey, we are going wrong somewhere and we need to change it. And sometimes you kind of need a third party to tell you, hey, stop, you can't see what I'm seeing, but I'm telling you that something is wrong here, but I'll also help provide solutions that you can implement that'll help change it. So yeah, I think they just kind of work hand in hand. I don't think that they're necessarily separate.
And then I think we have time for one more. So you work on very challenging issues in a very challenging time, but you also sound optimistic. Where do you see bright spots, and what are you most hopeful about?
Oh, hold on, I think you froze. I'm so sorry.
Oh no,
you froze a little bit.
Yeah, I'll repeat it. So you work on very challenging issues in a very challenging time, but you also sound optimistic. So where do you see bright spots, and what are you most hopeful about?
I see bright spots every time I go to work in the morning. I see bright spots knowing that I have colleagues that are fighting the good fight in all the areas that it needs to be fought. I see bright spots like when I look at you and when I see and hear about your organization, and the fact that people are starting to care, not only at the high level, but also just in the community, and as people are growing up and coming here. This is how we really change kind of hearts and minds, is we start at a young age implementing the idea that we could be better. And the thing is, I am optimistic because, like, even more so because even though we can look at COVID-19 and the pandemic as kind of like, you know, it's sad because, you know, I was trying to have a hot girl summer, but it really caused everybody across the globe to sit back and take notice of what is going on. No one could ignore it. No one could say, I'm headed to work, I'm in the metro, I don't have service. It's in your face all day, every day, because you're at home and you're not going anywhere. And seeing the movements globally, like the Amish joined, they have no internet, no electricity. They were out there with us on the streets saying, this is wrong, we need to change this. And that is seeing those types of images, seeing people in the streets, seeing Black Lives Matter like emblazoned across streets in the United States, seeing people understand the need for change is where I get my optimism, because I know that this is still just a moment and we're still slowly turning it into a movement. But it brings me hope, because this is, like, in my lifetime at least, this is almost like some of the greatest things I've seen, and it gives me hope every single time I open up my computer, turn on the news, and yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the whole call. This has been a great privilege to all of us. Yeah, just thank you for doing this, and thank you for everyone who came. So
yeah, thank you guys so much. I actually have to hop on. I'm like late to a meeting, but I really thank you guys for inviting me here. Thank you, Eleanor, so much for reaching out. And if you guys have any more questions, or if you guys need anything, you have my email. Feel free to reach out.
thank you.